Howdy, folks. This is Doc Owen. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show, coming to you live on Spreaker.com. That was my favorite group, Madison Rising, kicking off the evening. Welcome aboard, or welcome back. This is Doc's America minus 17, meaning that we have 17 weeks times 7. That'd be what, 119 days? Is that right? That should be right. Left until the November elections. That is not very long. So we are going to challenge your thought process in preparation for the elections. Before that, we got a couple of announcements. We are all over the social media, as you all know. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we've got a blog. Everything is Doc Owen Show, DOCOWENSHOW. And we have used another piece of social media, a place called Meetup.com, and started a meetup organization that will meet the second Wednesday of every month for a couple of hours. We will have some FaceTime with folks that are either in our home base, San Antonio, or care to travel to San Antonio. It is called Off the Clock with Doc, and it is the night before the show. It's my opportunity to get some real-life feedback and FaceTime with individuals. So I'm really looking forward to those, and if you would care to attend, we would love to have you. We'd like to know the head count before we go in, because it's being hosted this next week, the first one on July the 9th at Henry's Puffy Tacos. So if you get a chance, please go to meetup.com, register, join if you're not already a member, and look up Off the Clock with Doc. I had to think for a minute what the title was, and then RSVP to attend the meeting, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. So that's July the 9th, Wednesday, July the 9th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Henry's Puffy Tacos, the location on Bandera, just outside of Loop 410. Lead off with a happy 4th of July weekend. It has officially begun for most of us, I would think, at 5 o'clock this afternoon or a little before. Tomorrow is the 4th of July. It is one of the absolute major celebrations in the United States of America to celebrate our freedom and independence. We will talk a considerable about that in a little while. First of all, tradition has. We open up with a quote from my friends at Crown Grace International on leadership. The one that I found this week that we're going to use is another one that's short, succinct, and probably from somebody that we all know or have at least heard of, and we've seen her vehicles everywhere. They are pink. It's by Mary Kay Ash, the founder of Mary Kay Cosmetics. And it simply says, the speed of the leader is the speed of the gang. So in other words, the leader absolutely sets the pace. In preparation for the show tonight, I did a bit of homework. I felt it prudent to come forward with not just what I think, but what I could find in terms of celebrating the 4th of July and knowing the true history of how we got here, and hopefully, as the title of all these shows says, Doc's America, hopefully a path to return to some of the tried and true values that built this country. So I found one article, and actually, I got to tell you, it was published by a friend. It's a republication, but I got it via the head of VP of Communications for the San Antonio Tea Party, a fellow by the name of Tom Shoemaker, that is extremely sharp and knows what to pick and when and publish out there. And the title of it is The Way We Were versus the Way We Are, which is right on target to what I've been talking about. Thanks, Tom. It says Republic versus democracy. I would like for everybody to understand the difference. Those of us who are Texans understand the difference. We have always grown up with the moniker that we are the Republic of Texas. And there is a lot of meaning in those words. And for our regular listeners, you know, for the last 3 weeks prior to this, we always played a clip that was a Pledge of Allegiance by Red Skelton. And I'm not going to let you get away tonight without hearing it again for the last time, I think, in preparation for your 4th of July celebration. But let's talk about the difference between a republic and a democracy. The deliberations of the Constitutional Convention of 1787 were held in strict secrecy. Consequently, anxious citizens gathered outside Independence Hall in Philadelphia when the proceedings ended in order to learn what had been produced behind closed doors. The answer was provided immediately. A Mrs. Powell of Philadelphia asked Benjamin Franklin, "Well, doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" With no hesitation whatsoever, Franklin responded, "A republic, if you can keep it." That's the critical point. Our forefathers were explicitly clear about America being formed as a republic and not a democracy. America was never meant to be a democracy. It was always meant to be a republic. The chief characteristic and distinguishing feature of a democracy is rule by omnipotent majority, or omnipotent, however you care to pronounce it. In a democracy, the individual and any group of individuals composing any minority have no protection against the unlimited power of the majority. It is a case of majority over man. Democracy is a form of government that is the very antithesis of the traditional American system, which is that of a republic. A republic's underlying philosophy is expressed in essence within the Declaration of Independence, with primary emphasis on the people forming their government so as to permit them to possess only just powers, in other words, limited powers to the government, in order to make and keep secure the God-given unalienable rights of each and every individual and therefore of all groups of individuals. Its purpose is to control the majority strictly, primarily to protect the individual's God-given inalienable rights, period. In a true republic, there are only 2 basic laws. Don't hurt anyone, and don't touch someone else's property without their permission. If you've been listening to the shows for a while, I'll take you back to one that I did with a fellow by the name of Joe White at Kanakuk Camp, where I went to camp as a youngster with Joe. And the phrase of the camp is, "I'm third." God first, the other fellow second, and I'm third. That, to me, plays right into the formation of this country as a republic. Don't hurt anyone. If a free society, you should have every right to do, in a free society, every right to do whatever you want in your own life, so long as you don't negatively affect other people. When rules, laws, regulation, taxes, and restrictions impede citizens, a free society is not possible, and a democracy grows and takes over freedoms. I saw in that a bit of something that I don't normally wade into, and that is the question of abortion and women's rights. Because I know that there are those who would interpret that statement about right to do whatever you want in your own life as the right to an abortion. But check the end of the sentence. that don't negatively affect other people. That's where the other side comes into play and protects the life of the unborn person through non-abortion. So that being the case, what has happened? Skipped a minute. Republicans have faith that people can do what is right with their money. Democrats have little faith that people can take care of themselves and need the government to do exactly that for them, take care of their money. If you'll recall way back when, or recall your business education, there's two different theories of management, theory X and theory Y. One of them supports the fact that individuals naturally want to do good and do the right thing. That would be the Republican. We're not talking party here, but that would be a Republican point of view. The other says that they must be told what to do. They have to be managed. They have to be guided and directed on a constant basis and sometimes browbeaten in order to do what they're supposed to do. That would be the large government democracy point of view that says they're not capable of doing it on their own. So that being the case, what exactly happened to our republic? We started out as a representative republic, and we have since degraded into a democracy. More specifically, Republicans call the U.S. a republic, and Democrats call it a democracy. Both parties want the same thing, but disagree as to the means. There are multiple choices. Right now, the challenge is that society is utterly confused. They don't know whether we are a republic bound by a constitution or we are a democracy serving at the whim of the majority. I, for one, think that the republic is calling us to come back into the front. The way this country works and the reason that we attained all of the success that we attained is the fact that we operated as a republic. We operated with due respect for each other and the ability of each other and our fellow man, with a little bit of help from your friends, to do the right thing and take care of it in the proper manner. Got just a little bit for the break, so I'll wade into the next one. As a nation, we have some real soul searching to do. We are truly standing on the precipice of fundamental transformation. That should sound familiar to every one of you. If it is fully realized, it will leave our nation forever changed. There are many, many Americans who view this shift to socialism as a positive thing. It is only because they are severely misinformed and have had their analytical thinking skills completely destroyed by the communist-controlled education system. Pretty strong words, not mine. I got them from a place called Patriot Update. But by virtue of putting them out there, I don't necessarily disagree with them. I am an opponent of Common Core education curriculum, which is very statist, very communist type approach to an education system. It has a tendency to dumb our students down immeasurably. It's unbelievable. So basically, if you can't see by now that this crisis is being intentionally fabricated by the left using the classic Hegelian problem, reaction, solution formula, then there is little hope for you as an individual. It is a classic socialist, communist approach to ruling. We're up on our first break. I get to take a sip of water, and I will be right back.
for way too long. The time has come to break the chains that bind our freedom. 9 to 5, you think you've done all that's needed. Judging by your paycheck, do you think you've succeeded? There's more to life than work without meaning.
Howdy, folks. Welcome back. Well, let's trudge on through the history of our United States, the Republic. Let me start this bit with Red Skelton. And the reason I do that is because I don't think it has nearly as much impact if I recite the Pledge of Allegiance for you. I want you to continue to hear the breakdown of the words. I will tell you this. I have long thought as an individual that the most important part of the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America are the following words that follow those. And to the republic for which it stands. We must understand the difference. I think if you understand the difference, your celebration of these freedoms and liberty called the 4th of July will be a whole lot more enjoyable. So let's listen to Mr. Skelton very briefly and see what he has to say about the Pledge of Allegiance.
I remember a teacher that I had. Now, I went through the 7th grade. I went to the 7th grade. And I left home when I was 10 years old because I was hungry. And I used to, this is true. I work in the summer and I go to school in the winter. But I had this one teacher. He was the principal of the Harrison School in Vincennes, Indiana. To me, this was the greatest teacher, a real sage of my time, anyhow. He had such wisdom. And we were all reciting the Pledge of Allegiance one day. And he walked over, this little old teacher. Mr. Laswell was his name. Mr. Laswell. And he says, he says, I've been listening to you boys and girls recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester. And it seems as though it's becoming monotonous to you. If I may I recite it and try to explain to you the meaning of each word. I, me, an individual, a committee of one, pledge, dedicate all of my worldly goods to give without self-pity, allegiance, my love and my devotion to the flag, our standard, Old Glory, a symbol of freedom. Wherever she waves, there's respect, because your loyalty has given her a dignity that shouts, freedom is everybody's job. United. That means that we have all come together. States, individual communities that have united into 48 great states. 48 individual communities with pride and dignity and purpose. All divided with imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common purpose, and that's love for country. And to the republic, a state in which sovereign power is invested in representatives chosen by the people to govern. And government is the people, and it's from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people, for which it stands. One nation, meaning so blessed by God, indivisible, incapable of being divided, with liberty, which is freedom, the right of power to live one's own life without threats, fear, or some sort of retaliation. And justice, the principle or qualities of dealing fairly with others. For all, which means, boys and girls, it's as much your country as it is mine. And now, boys and girls, let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance: under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that is a prayer and that would be eliminated from schools too?
Unfortunately, what Mr. Skelton in those days thought would be a pity came to pass. It has been eliminated in our schools. I, for one, consider that a mistake. I think it takes away some of the opportunity for our children to be all that they can be. Let's go back to a time of choosing. Over the past couple of weeks, there have been a lot of rumors and a lot of internet articles about the United Nations coming in and going on a gun control or gun confiscation venue here in the United States. The problem is it may well be true, and it continues to press forward. It is definitely a high priority for those that believe that a government should control and not the citizens should control. You need to know that in 2006, the United Nations Human Rights Council, written by a lady by the name of Barbara Frey, refused to acknowledge that human beings have a right to keep arms for self-defense. Furthermore, the United Nations is claiming that governments that don't impose severe restrictions on the rights of individuals to own firearms are guilty of human rights violations. They are referencing America. We're the last major stand for gun rights. And from our perspective, from those of us who believe in the Republic, we're the last major stand for human rights, because it is only with self-defense that you can defend your human rights from the states' rights. You have to think all the way through it and connect the dots. You can't let the screaming and the yelling and the hand-wringing and all of the hoopla get to you. You got to deal with the basic fact of self-defense. That's what protects your freedom and your liberty and your human rights. Period. I mean, there's just, unfortunately, not any other way around it, which is exactly why the framers of our Constitution put that in there and put it in there very, very firm and solid language. And the other thing to understand is that the Constitution was written by very devout Christians, Judeo-Christians, that believed in God. 52 of the 55 signers of the Constitution were over-the-top Christian individuals. The other 3 still expressed a belief in the Bible, a belief in God, and a belief in the things that were in the Constitution. So that's where it all comes from, folks. It's all tied together, whether we like it or not. So the fight, the challenge, is between the rule of a majority or the protection of human rights. The difference between a democracy and a republic. And July the 4th celebrates this country as a republic. That's what it's all about, is our freedom and independence from somewhat of a democracy, England. It's when we establish this country as a republic. Important to know. Then let me dive into just a few little anecdotal items to finish out this 15-minute segment, and then we'll spend the last bit of time on the promised topic that we are going through now, and that is immigration reform, what's going on, why it's important, and how to deal with it. For one, as some of you probably know, as all of you know, the President Obama, in response to when he made the statement that he would settle the immigration issue with the power of his pen and his telephone. If Congress wouldn't act, he would simply do it on his own. And Congress response in the form of John Boehner was threatening to sue. And as would be the case, the administration basically said, so sue me. As long as and his statement about the Republicans was, as long as they're doing nothing, I'm not going to apologize for trying to do something. It's just, to me, it's unbelievable. And at the same time, it's really not the Republicans being the obstructionists. It's the Democrats who won't come to terms with and work out an arrangement. I seem to remember a movie some time back, not that I went to see it, but it made a lot of hoopla, so I couldn't help but know about it. I think the name of the movie was An Inconvenient Truth, and it was the bellwether movement of the hoax known as climate change or global warming or whatever came out of it. So on that note, when I read this article, I thought that this is basically an inconvenient truth. If you will remember, I intentionally poked fun at the patent office when it took away the Redskins' license to the name Redskin, based on what was perceived to be the racial slur of using the term Redskin. Well, it appears, in fact, that the patent agency, does not have any record of correspondence from the public about the Redskins' name expressing sentiments one way or another prior to the board's June 18th ruling. So there was no public outcry. There was no concern. There was a unilateral acting of government in the best interest of the rest of us. That's what you need to know. As to the IRS gate, very quickly, it appears that in the testimony lately of the IRS chief, he has greatly conflicted with the testimony of Lois Lerner, which means now one side is calling the other basically a liar. So they've had 3 years to run this cover-up, and they still can't get their story straight on who's in charge. We've got to take another little break at our 15-minute mark. I get to get another sip of water, and we will be right back. This is Madison Rising. I wanted you to hear some of their music. It is absolutely fabulous, inspiring, and a wonderful group. Got a 29-second limit, not imposed by them, but iHeartRadio. So I had to cut that one a little bit short. But when I pick up here in just a second, you'll be able to hear another 29 seconds, and then I'm going to encourage you to do something. So here they go again. Madison Rising. Pay attention.
Whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. Oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets.
What I'm going to encourage you to do is to go to MadisonRising.com and support the band. Buy yourself a T-shirt, buy yourself a coffee mug, buy some of their gear. That's how they support themselves, and they're extremely independent, so they're not on any label. They do all of their own productions, and they can greatly use it. I got a feeling that their star is, I don't have a feeling, I know, their star has already risen substantially with the theater introduction of Dinesh D'Souza's second movie. I think it's something about America, what if there were no America, or what's after America. And when all the credits are on the screen, you are listening in the background to Madison Rising and their rendition of the Star Spangled Banner. The Twitter universe lit up and stays lit up with people who see the movie and they come out and tweet about Madison Rising and their version of the Star Spangled Banner. So we probably got very, very lucky to get in early before they hit the big time. Homeland Security, their director of Homeland Security, just to lead into our immigration issues, he is preaching that America, he's not preaching, he's tweeting that America is an Islamic country. He put out his first tweet that caused such a ruckus. He stated that with an even more head-turning tweet about that it was an Islamic country. Yes, I do consider the United States of America an Islamist country with an Islamically compliant constitution. Move on. In other words, there's nothing to see here. Then when he got such blowback, he did the standard practice of doubling down on his mistake and said, I said America was an Islamic country, not a Muslim country. Please study up on the difference before attacking me. I have studied up on the difference. There is none. The attack stands. Is exactly what I would say to that. So, at one point, they interviewed General David Petraeus, was talking to the Margaret Thatcher Conference on Liberty about what comes after the United States. He very quickly answered and without hesitation that after America comes North America, and that North America was the big plan of the globalists and was already being implemented. It started about 20 years ago with the introduction of NAFTA and bringing all three of the countries together, Canada, the United States, and Mexico, economically. And supposedly now our economies are so intertwined that it is North America, that America is basically fading away. There was a announcement by White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest. He announced today, I believe it was, that, Thursday, July the 3rd, President Obama will be visiting a Washington, D.C. area mosque on the morning of July the 4th as a goodwill gesture to Muslim Americans. It goes on to say that the name and location of the mosque are currently being withheld for security reasons. That to me is kind of a, well, duh. And he's doing this on the morning of America's most patriotic holiday, will likely add to the criticism of his being a Muslim that is out there. The president will return to the White House and host the traditional White House July the 4th cookout. Several influential Muslim leaders have been invited to attend the cookout as a further gesture of goodwill. I would submit to you that it will not be a traditional 4th of July cookout. There will be no hot dogs. There certainly will be no barbecue, because barbecue in its beginning referred to pork, barbecued pork. That's why when barbecue came to Texas, you saw the signs that said barbecued beef. It actually started in the deep South where they barbecued pigs, and when it came to Texas, there weren't enough pigs, so they used cattle and advertised it as barbecued beef so that the locals would be able to make the distinction. Let's dive into the immigration real quick. If you don't understand, or you haven't kept track of, or you're not fully in tune with the information that's out there and available outside of the mainstream media, the immigration in the southern, coming across the Mexican border in Texas and Arizona is in fact an invasion. It has been orchestrated. There are numerous facts pointing to the numerous pieces of information pointing to the fact that it is absolutely no surprise that these numbers of individuals are coming across the border at this time. They had organizations waiting for their arrival to basically check them in, see to it that they were clothed and fed and well taken care of, and they are now being dispersed throughout the entire United States of America to various and sundry. The only thing I would know to call it would be like an internment camp. It happens to be on military bases that are underutilized due to the downsizing of the military. And what we are finding is that it is a very bad situation in that there are major and I think very legitimate health concerns that are simply being washed over. They're simply being completely ignored. They're not taking the time to truly vet these young people that are here. They know that they are sick. It just says that, here's the headline of this one, says the medical staff dealing with illegal alien influx is warned to keep their mouths shut or they will be arrested. So there's a group of security, internal Department of Homeland Security personnel, actually they're not, they're hired contractors, are on site at these military bases, and they are keeping everybody out and running it with a very, very tight-fisted environment for the people that work there. A lot of the healthcare officials have resigned their positions and left because the conditions are so terrible, and they didn't want to be any part of the dispersion of this health risk. I don't know how else to put it. There's a lot of information about exactly what diseases are being introduced into the United States, and I mean it's not being contained in Texas. The harm is not being done here in Texas or in Arizona. I've seen a map where they're going all over. I mean, it's got the routes and everything, and you can see you've now seen probably on television, the school buses with these children are going all over the country and actually being turned around in some places and not allowed to stop by people just swarming the street and blocking their way. To tell you how heavy-handed it is, a congressman went to one of the housing facilities in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which is outside, I think it's just outside of Lawton, but it's one of the major military bases in the country. He went to check on the condition of the children that were being held there, and he was turned away at the gate by one of these security guards. A congressman from the United States was not allowed to check on these children. I mean, he had to make an appointment, and they said he could probably get in on July the 21st. I would submit to you that by July the 20th, they plan to have them all moved out of there. And they're not going to stay on the military bases. They've hosted them out to all of these bases while they find families that they might have in the United States, cousins, uncles, aunts, any sort of a relative that they can then leave the base and be put in the custody of these relatives, all of which they are then supposed to come back to a hearing in court as to their ability to stay in the country. It is nonsense. And the worst part about it is planned nonsense. It's not a surprise to the administration. It's a surprise to the rest of us, but it's not a surprise to the administration. The intent is to overwhelm the system, and they're doing it. They are absolutely doing it. In addition, U.S.-Mexican border, they have found Muslim terrorists crossing in amongst these South Americans and Mexicans. The evidence is that they are finding their prayer rugs out in the desert being left behind just as they cross. And in response, the federal government has announced that they are launching a major public relations campaign in Central America to try to to tell these parents to keep their children at home. And the parents are basically saying they thought it would be easy for their son to get papers in the U.S., but that wasn't true. So our children are our future. Please protect them. They've sent them up here, and then they expect us to protect them. There's a real big disconnect on how this works. So let's dive in. We've got just enough time, I think, to dive into the specifics, some of the specifics. If you'll remember last week, I went through immigration reform, laid out a long-term, multi-year project with some real high-level headings. In the near term, the primary heading that I had was current law and enforcement. And tops on my list were sanctuary cities. So in terms of dealing with specifics, if you're not familiar with what a sanctuary city does or why they announced, certain cities in the United States have announced themselves as sanctuary cities, which means that the local police are under orders to stand down and not aggressively enforce current law. And that was done because on a federal level, ICE, Immigration and Customs, refused to take all of the people that the police were apprehending. So on a local basis, then the local authorities were left with the burden of holding these folks, and they really had nothing to hold them on if they had not broken local laws. All they had broken was the immigration laws, and they were here illegally, as if that wasn't enough. But that's a federal law, and they couldn't, so the local authorities couldn't hold them, and it became a real standoff between local police, local governments, and the feds. So what the local governments did, they became what is known as sanctuary cities. They just had to throw up their hands and say, we're not going to enforce the immigration law. You are safe here until the federal government works out what they're going to do about it. They're either going to enforce immigration or they're going to offer you amnesty. But until then, you're in a safe sanctuary. I think one of the first things that needs to happen is that needs to be cut off. Any federal funding to that city that's not going to enforce the immigration laws and protects their local citizens gets no federal funding. End of discussion. They have a duty to protect the local citizens from this overrun wherever it's coming from. Mexico, Central America, South America, I don't care. So sanctuary cities have absolutely got to go away. There's got to be no sanctuary for an illegal immigrant. Enforcement is mandatory. The next thing I had on my list were social programs, i.e. food stamps, i.e. medical care, i.e. schooling, all of these sorts of things. Sorry, we can't afford it anymore. So illegal immigrants need to be taken out of school. There's no room for them. We cannot support it. If they want to homeschool, that's fine. We can't afford to offer that anymore, which means we will also save the expense of having to do everything in multiple languages. This is the United States of America. Our language here is English, and we're proud of it, and we're going to stick to it. And we're more than welcome. Anybody is more than welcome here. In order to become a United States citizen, you must be able to, at least to a moderate level, be able to read and write English. It's required when you apply for citizenship. And I think that needs to start early and immediately. And I can hear the folks on the other side now. Where are they going to learn it if they're not in school? I got news for you. When we provide them their education in their home language, they're not learning it in school either. So take your choice. If you want them to be in school, they're going to have to learn English, and they're going to need to become citizens or have a good, solid target date of when they're going to take that test and become a United States citizen. The other social, that's the education. Food stamps, free medical care. If you don't pay into the systems that support those systems, you have no right. Sorry, you are not entitled. It's not part of what we owe you as an immigrant in this country. Think if the shoe were on the other foot, folks. What would happen to you if you went to Mexico or South America and made the same demands that are being demanded of you right now? How do you think you would be treated? Let me remind you of one individual that's in the news right now, and that's a Marine Corps sergeant who's being held in jail in Mexico because he took a wrong turn when he thought he was heading one way back to the United States. He wound up going deeper into Mexico and getting caught as an illegal alien on their soil, and he's been in jail ever since. There's got to be some equality. It's got to work both ways. I'll dive further into the rest of the detail of the immigration. I've spent probably a little bit too much time up front talking about the difference between a democracy and a republic, but I felt like on the eve of the 4th of July that was extremely important. So listen to this last little ditty. When you hear the word rock, replace it with the word doc, and I will be right back to remind you of the events we've got coming up next week. Thanks.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. Put your glad rags on. Join me home. We'll have some fun when the clock strikes 1. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock, rock, rock till broad daylight. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight.
Well, I normally do a very brief sign-off. This time I'm going to go a little bit longer. I want to remind you of our meetup next week. It is next Wednesday night, Henry's Puffy Tacos, 6 to 8 p.m., called Off the Clock with Doc. Now you get it to the closeout song. Please come join us. If you're here in San Antonio, I would love to hear from you. Go out tomorrow, have yourself a very safe 4th of July. Celebrate the Republic of the United States of America, and remember what that means when you say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the Republic for which it stands. God bless. Take care. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.